The Solitaire series, episode 19, The Two of Diamonds, by Troy Lambert. Narrated by Troy Lambert. Copyright 2020. Audio copyright 2025. Follow suit. It's a term that means play a card of the suit led, as in bridge and other card games. It also means conform to another's actions. Captain Charles Pickard started something in the late 1960s in Vegas, and when he shipped to Vietnam, he took over a more boots-on-the-ground operation there. The product still needed to be received and distributed in the United States, so when he left, someone else had to step into his position and follow suit. That was me, Specialist Peabody. My name, of course, led to all kinds of jokes about the time-traveling dog and his adopted son, Sherman, from the Rocky and Bullwinkle show. People were a real pain in the ass about it, but it did give me a great code name for the C-130 network we used. The Wayback Machine. W-A-B-A-C. Due to the fondness of the military for acronyms, no one ever questioned the letters. In my mind, they stood for Wartime Available Bold Answer to Cocaine. Heroin was a product in demand. The poppy fields of Vietnam were a perfect place for it to start, and struggling soldiers were perfect targets to create a shipping lane. Already we were trained to love the thrill that came with risk, thus our willingness to go into battle, but we never got paid much. An organization called Solitaire offered a solution. They had pull in high places, too. I went from being a supply specialist to an E7 in record time. That gave me more authority, and I worked with a couple of officers, apparently also well-paid and fast-tracked to a position of power that meant we had pretty autonomous operations authority. When the war seemed to be drawing to a close, shipments understandably slowed, although equipment being sent back stateside did offer us some opportunity. By then, I was married. I had 2 kids, both daughters, and as much as I wanted a son, my wife wasn't going to try a third time. We lived comfortably, but not too comfortably. She didn't know exactly what I did, but she knew we had more money than any sergeant first class in the Army should. My oldest daughter was 6 when I got the call. April 15th, 1975. 10, hut! Officer on deck! My driver, a young private first class, yelled the words and then snapped to the position of attention. We stood in a windowless room, one with radios on one side of the room, a long table surrounded by cheap chairs on the other. A slide projector sat on the table, the carousel empty, and a tattered screen decorated the wall it pointed at. A glance out of the corner of my eye told me it was a perfect heels together, feet at a 45-degree angle, thumbs along the seams of his battle dress uniform pants. His boots held a mirror shine, his uniform starched to uncomfortable stiffness. His pinned rank was a little crooked on the left side, but nothing that wouldn't pass a casual glance, which was all he would get. I snapped to rigid attention too, but a less rigid one than I would have 10 years before when I joined the Army. I knew the newly arrived officer well. You could say we did business together. At ease, the colonel said. Then he grinned and grabbed me by the shoulders. How are you, you old beast? Great, I said. It's good to see you. So is it true? Things are about over, he said. All but the final dance. Not that we actually won anything at all. Well, the country didn't, but we seem to have done okay. You're dismissed, Private, the colonel said, and the young man scurried from the room like a cockroach when the lights came on. So, what's up? I asked once we were alone. I'll get right to the point. Have you been introduced to our employer? Not formally. Okay, I'm not sure how much I can fill you in, but what I'll just say is there are some of us who are being offered more permanent positions in the organization. You're one of them. A more permanent position? As you can imagine, the product and service we have been providing has a lot of value, and if it stopped, the income stream of certain parties would be disrupted. I figured this was just a wartime thing. It was, initially. This would require a transition to a new business model. Where do I fit in? You know the people, the ins and outs of the operation. Simply a matter of transitioning the supply line from a military one to a private enterprise. What about my military career? I'm retiring. So are many of the other guys. We're worn out from the war. Tired, you know. But I don't have my full 20. Stay in the reserves. Do your weekend warrior shit with the guard if it matters to you. Why wouldn't it? The new gig will pay more than the Army ever will, and it's a legit job. You'd transition from supply sergeant to a logistics manager for a Southeast Asian shipping company. The only difference from what you're making on the side now is you'd have to pay taxes, but you could actually spend the money, with no worries. I sighed. This wasn't really my plan, but it did seem like a good idea. Maybe I would stay in the guard for appearance sake. That made sense in some ways. What if I decide I don't want to go to work for this organization? The colonel looked at me and sighed. Let me spell it out for you. Who did you take over for here? Captain Pickard. An officer. Okay, so they must have let him in on more information than you. Have you been given a playing card yet? A playing card? No. We've sent some special decks overseas as part of my regular job, but nothing related to this. Wait. I remembered one time, just before the captain shipped out to Vietnam and he took over, when we'd been offered a playing card in lieu of their normal payment. Pickard had taken the card and then paid me out of his own share. That had been, what, 5, 6 years ago? I was offered one in lieu of payment one time, I said. The colonel laughed. You have no idea what you missed out on. I wonder what happened to that card. I have no idea. It's not the card I meant, though. One like this one. The colonel reached in his pocket and pulled out a 7 of spades. I got lucky. I was recruited by a 6. What? It'll become clear soon. This is the kind of offer you can't refuse. You understand? I'm beginning to. This group, they can't have people running around who know about their operation but don't work for them. You understand my meaning now? So I take the job, or basically, I slid my thumb across my throat. He nodded. Okay, I'm in. The colonel was right. I was tired of the military, and legit money we could actually spend without worry. My wife would love that, and she didn't have to know any more about my new job than she did about my current one. Come with me, he said. We walked out into the light. My driver sat behind the wheel of the Jeep I'd been using. You can head home, kid, I told him. He drove off quickly. A dark sedan waited for us, and the colonel and I got in the back. His driver seemed to know where to go. A few short, quiet minutes later, we arrived at a low stone building, one with bars on the windows and 2 large men dressed in black standing outside. One of them looked familiar to me, and I figured he must be an ex-soldier who'd been recruited. I removed my hat as we went inside, and then we walked through a narrow hallway to an office on the right. The walls were the same urine yellow as those in the hallway, and a few low incandescent bulbs only enhanced that look. A military-issue metal desk, complete with the typical metal-padded chairs, occupied the center of the room. Sergeant, the large man behind the desk exclaimed, I was hoping we would see you. The colonel here said you were a smart man. Thank you, sir, I said. Oh, bother with that sir shit, the man said. We aren't military around here, although we do need to do something about this furniture. Agreed, I said, although it does make this place feel a bit like home. The man laughed. You're going to fit right in. Grab a seat. Have you been filled in? I suppose I have, I told him as I settled into one of the horrid chairs. We're just transitioning our current operation to a civilian one. Just, he said. I like your attitude. It will be a little more complex than that, but I think you're the man for the job. I appreciate the confidence, sir. Ha! There you go with the sir again. We will need more personnel, too. Do you have some contacts you can trust who perhaps have already worked with you in the past? I do. You get a bonus for everyone you recruit. Pretty sweet deal, huh? The colonel poked me in the ribs. Yeah, I said, already running through a list of names in my head, rejecting some, putting others on my mental maybe list. To start with, here's your card. The man behind the desk pulled a deck of cards out of a drawer and drew a card. It was a 2 of diamonds. This card will identify you and get you access where you need it and keep you out of areas where you might get into trouble. Thanks, I said, taking it, looking it over. There's nothing too special about that one, he said, but there will be others. Here is a short deck for you. He handed me a thin box of cards, and I flipped it over and slid them out. They were all diamonds, 2 through ace. Everyone you recruit has to follow suit, if you know what I mean. If you give them a card, you're taking responsibility for them. Of course, we will help. There is a vetting process. How do I trigger that? By handing over a card. You, of course, have already passed, or you wouldn't be here. Excellent, I said, hoping it actually was. We're happy to have you as part of the team, the man said and stood. Welcome to Solitaire. The colonel and I both shook his hand, and then we headed out. Welcome aboard, he said when we were outside the building and headed to his car. Thanks, I said. I guess I have paperwork to file. I already did it for you, he said. You'll get new ETS orders tomorrow. What? I knew you'd say yes, and even if you didn't, I knew you'd technically be leaving the military anyway. You still want to do the guard? I thought about it. 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year away from the family. But I could end up being deployed. What about deployments? I asked. You won't be chosen in any way that will disrupt your job performance. The guard also might be a great place to recruit people for Solitaire. I hadn't asked what the bonus was, but I had no doubt it would be significant. Sure, I said. Count me in. Will do, he said. Let me drop you at home. I didn't have to tell him or his driver my address. They drove straight there. I'll never forget that day. A rapid 3 months later, I left active duty for a civilian career. Just over 20 years later, when I left the Guard too, with damn near 30 years in, I recruited my daughter into the business. The 12th successful recruit from me. I couldn't have been prouder as I presented her with the Queen of Diamonds. Thanks for listening to the Solitaire series, episode 19, The 2 of Diamonds. Next up in the series, the 5 of Diamonds.